If you've ever stopped to think about what powers the world around you, cars speeding down highways, planes crossing oceans, or ships hauling goods across the globe, it almost always comes down to one thing: crude oil. It's been the backbone of modern life for over a century. But what if we didn't have to rely on it at all? Today we're breaking down whether we can actually make fuel without crude oil. From plant-based alternatives to fuels created from air, water, and even waste. Right here on History of Simple Things. Long before crude oil dominated the world, humans were already experimenting with different types of fuel. Early civilizations burned wood, charcoal, and animal fats just to cook food and stay warm. These were simple fuels, but they laid the foundation for everything that came later. In the 1800s, things started to change. Coal became the primary fuel during the Industrial Revolution, powering steam engines, factories, and trains. Not long after, crude oil entered the scene. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, refined products like kerosene and gasoline began to take over, especially with the rise of automobiles. But here's something most people don't realize. The idea of alternative fuels isn't new at all. In fact, early engines were designed to run on a variety of fuels. Rudolf Diesel, the inventor of the diesel engine, originally demonstrated it using peanut oil. Around the same time, ethanol was already being used as a fuel for lamps and engines. So while crude oil eventually became dominant because it was cheap and energy-dense, the concept of making fuel without it has been around for over a century. What's different today is the urgency and the technology to make it happen on a global scale. Before we talk about alternatives, let's quickly understand what fuel actually is. At its core, fuel is just a substance that stores energy and releases it when burned or converted. Gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel all come from crude oil, but what really matters isn't the oil itself, it's the hydrocarbons inside it. Hydrocarbons are molecules made of hydrogen and carbon. When you burn them, they react with oxygen and release energy in the form of heat. That's what powers engines. So technically, if we can create hydrocarbons or something that behaves like them, we can make fuel without ever touching crude oil. And that's exactly what researchers are doing. One of the most well-known alternatives is biofuel. These are fuels made from plants or organic materials. For example, ethanol is commonly produced from crops like corn or sugarcane, while biodiesel can come from vegetable oils or even used cooking oil. Here's how it works. Plants absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere as they grow. When we turn them into fuel and burn them, that same carbon dioxide is released back. In theory, this creates a more balanced carbon cycle compared to fossil fuels, which release carbon that's been trapped underground for millions of years. But biofuels aren't perfect. Growing crops for fuel takes land, water, and energy. In some cases, it can compete with food production, which raises ethical and economic concerns. Still, in many countries, biofuels are already blended into regular gasoline, proving they're a viable part of the solution. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Synthetic fuels, also known as e-fuels, are created by combining hydrogen with carbon dioxide to form liquid fuels that behave just like gasoline or diesel. The process usually starts with water. Using electricity, scientists split water into hydrogen and oxygen in a process called electrolysis. Then, that hydrogen is combined with captured carbon dioxide, either from the air or industrial emissions. The result? A liquid fuel that can power existing engines. The big advantage here is compatibility. Synthetic fuels can be used in today's cars, planes, and infrastructure without major changes. That means we wouldn't need to replace millions of vehicles overnight. However, there's a catch. Making synthetic fuel requires a lot of energy, especially electricity. For it to be truly environmentally friendly, that electricity needs to come from renewable sources like wind or solar. Otherwise, you're just shifting the emissions somewhere else. Hydrogen is often called the fuel of the future, and for good reason. When hydrogen is used in a fuel cell, it produces electricity with water as the only byproduct. No carbon dioxide, no smoke, just clean energy. Hydrogen can be produced without crude oil, especially through electrolysis powered by renewable energy. This type is known as green hydrogen. But hydrogen comes with challenges. It's the lightest element in the universe, which makes it difficult to store and transport. It also requires new infrastructure, special tanks, pipelines, and fueling stations. Despite these hurdles, hydrogen is already being tested in buses, trucks, and even airplanes. It may not replace all fuels, but it could play a huge role in reducing emissions in heavy industries and long-distance transport. Here's something that sounds almost too good to be true, turning garbage into fuel, but it's very real. Waste-to-fuel technologies break down materials like plastic, agricultural waste, and even household trash into usable fuels. One method, called pyrolysis, heats waste in the absence of oxygen, breaking it down into oil-like substances. Another method, gasification, converts waste into a gas that can be turned into fuel. This approach has a double benefit. It reduces waste while creating energy. Considering how much trash the world produces every day, this could be a valuable resource. Still, the technology is complex and not yet widespread. It also needs careful management to avoid releasing harmful pollutants during the process. So, can we fully replace crude oil? The short answer is yes, but not easily and not all at once. We already have multiple ways to produce fuel without crude oil. Biofuels, synthetic fuels, hydrogen, and even fuels made from waste. Each has its strengths and weaknesses. Some are cleaner, some are more scalable, and some are closer to widespread use. The real challenge isn't just making the fuel, it's producing it in massive quantities at a reasonable cost and building the infrastructure to support it. Right now, crude oil still dominates because it's energy-dense, relatively cheap, and deeply integrated into global systems. But that's starting to change. As technology improves and the push for cleaner energy grows stronger, these alternatives are becoming more practical every year. So, can we make fuel without crude oil? Absolutely, we already are. The real question is how quickly we can scale these solutions and make them accessible worldwide. The future of fuel might not come from deep underground, but from plants, air, water, and even our trash. And if that future becomes reality, it could completely reshape how we power our world. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.